When I move with the plan and a purpose. Press hard, but not too hard.
Word. Kanan Stark is into a whole lot of bad things. Being his best friend is dangerous.
I didn't kill nobody.
It never hurts to have partners in crime.
Now, we've been asking where is Sean Famous Figueroa for a while. He was in none of the teasers and trailers. He wasn't in any of the posters or promotions. I initially mentioned in one of my breakdowns, let's wait and see what Antonio Ortiz has to say in the interviews that everybody normally does before the season. However, he wasn't there either, but we will see him in a flashback. This is a young Famous, Jess and Olga, Famous's moms. They're going to give us the answer one way or the other, and it looks like it is going to be in episode 5, based on some of these exclusive images. So hopefully we finally get our answer in 405, which I do think is the death of Famous. I do think the writing is on the wall, based on these exclusive images. The exclusive images and the clues that they've dropped through various conversations from Lou, B. Rilla, Mr. Gelfand, and even Amani Okoye in 404, it definitely is over, in my opinion. But as usual, we're going to be running through all these exclusive images for all things season 4, episode 5. With that being said, let's start with the episode title and synopsis. Now, the title of episode 5 is a nail that sticks up, and the synopsis reads: Rock and Marvin navigate a dwindling supply of product. While Lou and Imani scout artists together, Joy's condition worsens. Meanwhile, Famous's mother desperately tries to find him. Now, let's start with this whole Famous situation. We've got a flashback of Famous when he was younger, with a younger Jess and also a younger version of Olga, Famous's moms. It kind of looks as if she's got a bit of a bruise on the side of her face, although it is very difficult to tell. But in this flashback, she might have got into a physical altercation with someone. Let's wait and see. Either way, considering we're now getting even deeper into Famous's story arc, where we are going to get a flashback, we're getting even deeper into his backstory. I really do think the writing is on the wall. I think it's probably the worst kept secret Famous is out of here. Let's see what else they reveal in terms of the flashback and the backstory. Other than these two images where Olga looks as if she has a bruise on her face, there's nothing much else to go on in terms of this particular flashback. Apart from the fact, if they are diving deep into Famous's story, there can only be one reason as to why. Now, we've also got Kanan and Jukebox comforting Famous's moms. We know she's going to be looking for him, that's for sure. It's been teased in the synopsis. Although I do think her search is going to be to no avail. I do think they will eventually find out Famous is gone. The fact we have Kanan looking at his mixtapes, add in the scene where it seems like he's thrown something across the room, and where he's also in tears, which matches up to with what he's wearing in this particular scene. I do think he's out of here. This is the episode where Kanan will definitely find out Famous is no more. It's going to be a real sad story, that's for sure. I just personally hope they don't make Famous go out as a snitch, but let's wait and see. I really don't think Kanan would ever name his son after a snitch. But just one further point on Famous just before we move on. In my breakdown earlier this week, I mentioned how I wouldn't be surprised if we do find out about Famous's death in 405. But if they were to keep it a mystery in terms of who the actual killer is, kind of a whodunit scenario, that's something I can definitely see coming from a mile away. Because we know how Raising Kanan work, they're very patient in terms of telling their story. It's going to give Kanan something to wonder, a side mission. Maybe that's what he's telling OC. Go find out information in the streets. Is anyone talking about Famous? Has anyone got any information? We know the streets do talk. We know they're going to be talking that he spoke to law enforcement, he's a snitch, and so on. But let's wait and see. I do think this storyline will be the center of the storm in 405. Now moving over to Joyce Thomas. Her condition is getting worse and worse as the episodes pass by. We've got her at home where it seems as if she's had a fall. Kanan and Jukebox are here to help. And I really like how they're taking the time with this one. It is a slow burn. Raising Kanan is a slow burn. They're not rushing Joyce's death, but they're showing the process that people in Joyce's age eventually go through. I've seen it with both my grandparents. When you do reach a certain age, you do become forgetful. You end up having falls because you don't quite have that balance. You're a lot more fragile. I've definitely seen it with a lot of elderly people, especially growing up in the same household as my grandparents. We've also got an image of Marvin and Joyce, and it is almost time for Joyce to go. I personally don't see it happening in episode 5. I do think they're building up to it. I think there is a few more conversations that might need to take place, or maybe not. I wonder if Joyce actually goes before Rock can have another conversation with her. Maybe that's why we'll see her crying a bit later on when Joyce actually goes. So that's just a thought. But with that being said, let's move on to all things Rock and her building her empire. Now, we've got Rock in a meeting with Quan, where we will hear her mention. She moves with a plan, and she moves with purpose. And I think we all know there's going to be a lot of tension in this room. Kwan's price increase of 20% didn't go down well at all with Rock, which made her make her own moves to source a new supply, where she'll eventually try and take Kwan's position. But this is someone who isn't just going to hand over his territory in Queens. I've mentioned it before, they've got an existing arrangement with the Italian crime families, one which might be complicated with Phil Russo's introduction, New Jersey's new crime boss. I do think he will get involved at some point, so let the games begin. A lot of these players have started to make their chess moves, and let's see who best places themselves in a position to win come the end of Season 4. Now, Rock is also going to be dealing with a dwindling supply of product, which seems like it's going to be an issue with David and Terry. We've got Marvin who's going to slap some sense into David, and we also see him in conversation with Terry a bit later on. However, Rock did warn.
Press hard, but not too hard.
Go hard, but don't go too hard. But I think if we match up the scenes, we all know what's coming in 405. Words will probably be spoken like they were in 402, and it's just going to end up with Marvin pulling the trigger, which is going to be a huge issue for Rock. She's just found out they've lost Andre, and the last thing they need is more bloodshed in the streets, in and around her organization, which could put them back on law enforcement's radar. They don't have Andre anymore to keep them one step ahead, and that's a big chess piece she's missing on her chessboard. He was really crucial because he had all the connections to law enforcement. We also can't forget Rock still needs to find out about all the deals Marvin's been doing on the side. You add on top the mistake he's definitely going to make in 405. I think Marvin is a ticking time bomb. I still think the final straw could potentially be killing Famous. I do think we'll end up seeing that at some point in a potential flashback. But speaking of Marvin, let's move on to the aftermath of Jukebox's first kill. Now, we do know she's going to have this conversation with Mara. After the death of Aaron, who seemed like an abuser, I don't think any tears will be shed, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's shook. So questions will definitely be asked in terms of Jukebox's role. She's going to stay strong and mention she had nothing to do with the murder. However, how does Jukebox react in terms of her getting her first kill? I think that's the question heading into 405. We're going to see her having a conversation with Marvin, but I do suspect her reaction is going to be very different to that of Famous's in Season 3. This is someone who's a lot tougher, stronger, she's been through more shit, she's seen more shit. We've also seen the smack at the end of 404, and that was quite telling in terms of who this character is and where she's heading, which we already know based on the character we saw from Power. But moving on to Kanan and OC. Now, Kanan still needs to find out who robbed them. Stefano and Pop mentioned that he looks very vulnerable if he kind of lets this go unanswered in the streets. He needs to show people who he is, and I think he will want to put down a marker, but I'm very surprised he is still continuing to do business from this particular apartment, considering it has been a target before. OC is probably scared, and Kanan's probably telling him just get on with it, maybe also help find information on who robbed them, information on Famous, and just carry on business as usual. But OC is a character who I did put on my death predictions earlier on this season, because he is someone who can definitely be an easy kill in Season 4. So let's see how Kanan begins to kind of take on board the mentorship of Snaps and Pop, as well as the situation with Famous and also his grandma, Joyce Thomas. But moving on to Lou and Imani Okoye. Now, we are going to see them scouting some talents in 405. However, besides them scouting talents and potentially getting closer, I did raise a point earlier on in the week in terms of how I really didn't like the way she questioned Lou about Famous. It was very reminiscent to the way Gerald used to question Marvin, so I do think Lou needs to tread very carefully around Imani. I mean, she may turn out to be exactly who she says she is, but if there are any funny questions when she is with Lou in terms of Famous or maybe something else, then that's when I think we should all start to think, maybe there might potentially be something in this. So that's definitely one to just keep in the back of our minds. Let's see what happens in 405. Her and Jackie are definitely on my watch list. I'm not saying 100% they are confidential informants, but they definitely should be on the watch list, that's for sure. But that's a quick preview of the exclusive images for Raising Kanan, episode 405. I think it's time we find out what happened to Famous, and I do think we will get our answer. I've got Marvin making another mistake, and I really do think Lou needs to tread very carefully around Imani Okoye, in my opinion. I mean, I could potentially be wrong, but definitely something we need to keep in mind because of Gerald, and also, as I like to mention, history does often rhyme. But that's all for this particular preview. No doubt it's going to be another great episode, and I will check in with you guys later on in my breakdown as usual. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.